The science fiction franchise that began with James Cameron's The Terminator has grown increasingly complex with each new installment. What started as a straightforward time travel narrative about protecting humanity's future savior has evolved into a tangled web of alternate timelines, paradoxes, different Terminator models, and contradictory rules. While the franchise's core concept remains compelling, its internal logic has become more convoluted with each attempt to expand the story. Even the most dedicated fans struggle to reconcile the inconsistencies accumulated across films, TV series, and other media. From fundamental questions about causality to more specific contradictions in how certain technologies work, the franchise prioritizes spectacle over coherence. The recent edition of Terminator Zero acknowledges many of these logical inconsistencies, suggesting the creative team has become aware of the narrative knots they've tied. The very foundation of Skynet's existence and their ridiculous plans present an insurmountable logical paradox. In every timeline, the advanced AI system's creation stems from reverse-engineered technology left behind from future Terminators. This creates a bootstrap paradox. Skynet essentially creates itself by sending back the very technology that led to its own development. Miles Dyson's work at Cyberdyne Systems in Terminator 2 relies on examining the remains of the first T-800, yet without Skynet, that T-800 would never have existed. This circular causality becomes even more problematic with each new story iteration. Whether it's Cyberdyne Systems, Legion in Dark Fate, or any other AI system, they all seem to spring from future technology rather than natural technological progression. The franchise never adequately explains how this self-creating loop could have started in the first place, leaving a gaping hole in its foundational premise. The franchise's approach to naked time travel mechanics shifts dramatically between installments. The first film suggests a fixed timeline where the past cannot be changed. Kyle Reese's mission creates John Connor, fulfilling a predestined loop. However, Terminator 2 completely reverses this by showing that the future can be altered, with Sarah Connor's actions preventing Judgment Day from occurring in 1997. Subsequent films further muddy these waters. Terminator Genesis introduces the concept of alternate timelines and memory retention, while Dark Fate suggests that preventing one apocalyptic future simply leads to another taking its place. These constantly shifting rules make it impossible to understand the true stakes of any time travel mission, as the consequences seem to change based on whatever serves the current plot. 8. The biological aging of Terminator models creates a significant logical inconsistency within the franchise. While Terminator Genesis attempts to explain why the T-800's living tissue ages by matching Arnold Schwarzenegger's appearance, this raises questions about the practicality of such a design choice. If Terminators are meant to be perfect infiltration units, why would Skynet program their organic components to age, potentially compromising their effectiveness? This becomes particularly problematic in Dark Fate, where the same T-800 has aged into a family man named Carl. The franchise never adequately explains why a sophisticated killing machine would be designed with planned obsolescence, or how aging flesh affects the endoskeleton's functionality. A clear attachment to the past characters and iconography is holding the franchise back as they shoehorn ways to keep Arnold in the role he was born to play. The franchise's treatment of John Connor becomes increasingly problematic with each new installment. Initially presented as humanity's destined savior in the first two films, his importance to the future war fluctuates wildly. Terminator 3 shows him as an uncertain leader, Sarah Connor Chronicles reimagines his development, and Genesis transforms him into a hybrid evil John Connor. Dark Fate takes the most dramatic step by eliminating him, suggesting he wasn't as crucial to humanity's survival as previously established. This constant reinvention of John's character and significance undermines the emotional weight of the original films. The franchise seems unable to decide whether he's an irreplaceable messiah figure or just one of many potential leaders in humanity's resistance. This inconsistency becomes particularly glaring in Destination Zero, which questions the very notion of a predestined savior. It's also hard to forget Christian Bale's iteration, though his performance is infamous for his on-set rant that went viral. Despite multiple films claiming to feature the definitive battle for humanity's future, the franchise continues to generate new apocalyptic scenarios. Terminator 2's mission to prevent Judgment Day seemingly succeeds, only for Terminator 3 to reveal it was merely delayed. Dark Fate introduces Legion as a replacement threat after Skynet's defeat, while Genesis presents yet another variation of the same basic conflict. The franchise appears trapped in a cycle of introducing new threats that function identically to Skynet, suggesting that humanity's fate is to battle against its own technological creations eternally. This pattern of perpetual apocalypse undermines the significance of each, final, mission. The franchise appears trapped in a cycle of introducing new threats that function identically to Skynet, suggesting that humanity's fate is to battle against its own technological creations eternally. Destination Zero at least acknowledges this repetitive nature, incorporating it into its narrative rather than ignoring it. Skynet's strategies often defy logical analysis for artificial intelligence designed for maximum efficiency. Instead of sending multiple Terminators to the same time period to ensure mission success, it repeatedly opts for individual units that can be defeated. The choice to send advanced models like the T-1000 to later time periods than the original T-800 seems particularly counterintuitive, as earlier deployment of superior technology would logically increase success probability. The overly elaborate nature of these plans becomes especially apparent in films like Salvation and Genesis, where Skynet develops increasingly complex schemes rather than utilizing more straightforward and more direct approaches to attacking humans. This tendency toward unnecessary complications suggests poor strategic programming or prioritization of dramatic plotting over logical consistency. One of the franchise's most persistent logical flaws is how regularly humans defeat supposedly superior machines with new weapons, surpassing the original T-800 in every installment. While the first film established that Terminators could be overcome through resourcefulness and determination, subsequent installments stretch credibility by having humans repeatedly triumph over increasingly advanced models. The T-1000 in Terminator 2, despite its near-invulnerable liquid metal composition, falls victim to relatively simple tactics. This pattern continues throughout the series, with each new, unstoppable, Terminator being stopped through increasingly implausible means. While human ingenuity is certainly a compelling theme, the ease with which supposedly perfect killing machines are outmaneuvered raises questions about Skynet's competence in designing its assassins. The franchise's approach to continuity becomes increasingly problematic as each new installment selectively acknowledges or ignores previous events, making a single timeline hard to find or not be retconned. Terminator 3 dismisses much of T2's impact, while Salvation creates a future war setting that barely resembles the one glimpsed in earlier films. Dark Fate takes this further by completely disregarding 3 previous sequels, yet still falls into many of the same logical traps. This casual approach to established canon makes it impossible to maintain any coherent timeline or set of rules within the universe. When each new film feels free to rewrite or ignore previous installments, the narrative becomes a series of contradictory alternatives rather than a cohesive story. Despite being an obsolete model, the T-800 consistently proves capable of holding its own against theoretically superior Terminators. In Genesis, an older T-800 manages to fight effectively against both a T-1000 and a T-3000, while Dark Fate shows Carl able to engage in combat with a Rev-9, despite the latter's significantly advanced capabilities. This raises questions about why Skynet would continue developing new models if the original design remains so effective. This contradiction becomes particularly glaring when considering the technological gulf between these models. Suppose a T-800's physical capabilities can match those of its successors. In that case, it suggests either poor advancement in Skynet's research and development or a significant plot convenience to maintain Schwarzenegger's central role in the franchise. Perhaps the franchise's most fundamental logical flaw is the cyclical nature of the conflict itself. No matter what actions were taken in the past, some form of artificial intelligence inevitably threatens humanity. The basic pattern remains unchanged whether it's Skynet, Legion, or another variation. This raises questions about the purpose of sending Terminators or human protectors through time if the core conflict cannot be prevented. Destination Zero addresses this paradox directly, suggesting that the very nature of technological development creates some form of inevitability in AI becoming self-aware and causing an uprising. While this acknowledgement provides a meta-commentary on the Terminator franchise's repetitive nature, it also highlights the fundamental futility of the time travel missions that form the basis of every story. If humanity is doomed to face this conflict regardless of intervention, the entire premise of changing the future through time travel becomes logically suspect.